Happy New Year's, everybody. It's actually New Year's Eve, the afternoon. Well, no, it's not even afternoon yet. It's still morning. I just looked at the clock. It's 10:50 in the morning. And what are we doing today? We're out in the shop. Oh, I got caught by a little surprise yesterday. Let me show you. Welcome to 3D Accuracy, where I'll talk about 3D printing, 3D product design, and 3D injection and die-cast mold design. When we opened up the first crate a couple days ago and took the 3D printer out of the crate, get it off the pallet, we noticed that there was a material leak inside. And it appeared to be dry. It's a little damp to the touch, but it's not hard yet, but it's going to get there. And yesterday I noticed that there was material on the floor. There was a puddle of material. So apparently what happened is the machine was not shut down properly, and somebody pulled the cartridges, the material cartridges, out of the machine, and so it created a leak because it wasn't flushed out properly, and so it's basically siphoning all the material out of the system and leaking on the inside. I wiped some of this up yesterday, but it was quite a bit of material was down there, and I'll show you on the side over here. You can see there's a lot of material in there. It's still wet. There was a lot of material down here. I wiped up some of it to keep it from dripping on the floor again. You can see there's a puddle of, we jammed some of these foam pieces underneath there just to keep it off the floor. And you can see there's some material still leaking. So what I want to do today is get that out of there. And you see this, there's a whole bunch of material trapped in here. I don't know how that's supposed to work exactly, but I thought, how am I going to get that out of there? So anyway, what I want to do today is get this material mess cleaned up in the printer. So I'm not expecting to get it all. I mean, there may be some still in the feed lines and the tubing that's going to continue to leach out and drip. But at least I want to get the brunt of it out of there so that it's not such a big mess. Of course, it's easier to deal with now when it's wet than when it gets hard. When it gets dry and hard, then it's much more difficult. So what I'm going to do is get some alcohol, and I can wipe it, and that'll help get it off when the material is still soft. It's still a little wet. The alcohol will should work to get some of that off of there. If I have to get more aggressive, then there's other chemicals that can be used, but I'll take it one step at a time because I don't want to damage anything. I just want to get it clean, get the mess cleaned up. So that's what's on the agenda for today. Just clean the machine, get all the goo out of there. And I'll show you a little bit as I go along what's happening. I'm going to start down on the bottom where it's the most wet, even though it's all running downhill, and work my way up. I know on the top here it's starting to dry, but I'll deal with that a little bit at a time. I decided to attack some of this material spill up on top here, and look at what happened. I've used some alcohol, just some 70% isopropyl alcohol, and I wet the material spill here. It wasn't quite 100% dry as it was, and it started to separate. I just kept it wet with alcohol. Then I have a scraper here. It's polypropylene. It's a little flexible to it, but you don't want to use a metal scraper with this, so you scrape the paint. And then I started working it, and look at how easily it starts to come off. Look at that. This works really, really well as long as you get to the spill before everything gets really hard. It's still just a little tacky, and the alcohol can get into it and it just comes right off. Look at that. So that's what I'm going to do to the whole machine today, is just work my way straight down through the machine until I get all the yuck out of here. At least it's not a horribly difficult job. It's just a little tedious because there's a lot of little screws and a lot of little wires and stuff and parts on the inside. So it's going to take a little doing. The other thing that I can't do right now, I would love to drop the build platform down so I could get at the head from underneath and make sure it's clean. But I can't do that until I get the monitor hooked up to the machine and the keyboard and the mouse so that I can fire up the computer in the machine, and then I can do some maintenance type things. But right now I just want to get all this material out of here. That's the first thing to do, is to get this cleaned up. But this works really well. Once you let this dry, and it's been wet like this for several days, but once it dries, now it's a nightmare to try to get that stuff off, from what I understand. So this looks like it's going to work just fine for the situation that I have.
Oh, today is 2024 Eve. 2025 Eve.
2025 Eve.
Yeah. Labo is working hard, huh?
Yes. See, it just slivers up into little itty bitty pieces. It just breaks up. So anyway, I'm going to work some of this and then I'll show you more later. I'm making pretty good progress on this Connex 500, getting that material out of there. Let me show you what I have so far. The material came off pretty easily on this side, and along here it came off pretty good. And then as I started getting in this direction, over here, now the material is much more difficult to get off. You can see there's some here that I've soaked several times and I haven't been able to get some of that off of there. So I'm going to have to be a little bit more aggressive with it. I also moved the head out of the way. I've cleaned behind it back here on this side. I've cleaned back up in here behind this this whole assembly on this side, because this whole thing moves out and comes over here, and I can put this any place I want, so I can get at it. But this side's going to need a little bit more attention. So what I have to do is over here on this side, just below the toilet, you can see up underneath there's a device. I got to get all that out of there. I want to clean all that out. And you see there's a bunch of material inside this little, it almost looks like a reservoir. I'm going to have to take it out of there. There's an Allen screw here on this side, and I think there's another one over there on that side. So I got to take this apart. Then I noticed when I was sopping up the wet material, there's a lot of it around these fasteners, the socket head cap screws, and some of them have material that ended up like this one, ended up inside the head itself. And so what I have to do is I have to take all this apart. I got to get all these screws out of here, get all this apart, get this one back here out, all the screws along here, so that I can clean that out and wipe it down with alcohol to get rid of the material, because once that hardens, I'm not going to be able to get Allen wrenches into the screws in order to get them out, or it may all be stuck together, and then I've got a hell of a time removing these pumps. These are pumps here. This one, what does it do? This is sucking scrap material out, and then it goes through and it comes out the other side, feeds down, goes around to the back into that container. So I want to clean that out right now so that I don't have an issue with these components being difficult to remove when I need to remove them. Down here is just wet material, so I'll sop this up and just check if there's any screw holes in there. Looks like there might be some sheet metal screws in there. So I'll get that all cleaned up so that if I ever need to remove some of these things, I can get at the screws. Then I need to take the back off, the back panel off, in order to get back over here to get some of this material cleaned up. But where the vacuum leak might be happens to be right in here. There are some components in this area, and I was told that this is a key area to look for a vacuum leak. So I have to take the back panel off in order to get at that anyway. So I might as well do that, clean up all the materials, and then I'm ready to check out the vacuum leak once I get to that point. So that's what I'm going to do now, is disassemble this so I can clean it. I may end up having to do some of this tomorrow. Tomorrow is New Year's. New Year's Day, huh? Good way to start the year, huh? Working out in the shop, doing things. Fortunately, I like being out here, so... But it's coming along. It looks much better than it did before. I also had the build platform kind of wiped down, but this I'm not worried about because I can come in here with a razor blade and lightly skim this in order to get any residue off, and then wipe it down with alcohol, get it cleaned. So we'll keep going. Well, we're about a half an hour from it being dark outside, and so can't see this really well, but that's all been taken apart and cleaned up and put back together. I'll show it to you again in the morning when the light is better. I hope you really enjoyed this video. If you're ever in need of 3D product design, 3D injection mold design, 3D die-cast mold design, or 3D printed prototypes or production parts, please feel free to contact me. You can find contact information in the video description. I look forward to hearing from you and to being of service to you. Thank you for watching. As always, I appreciate it. See you on 3D Accuracy's next video.